Galen, we'll start with you. Just how did it, first of all, feel to be out there? And second of all, what do you think the offense was just so disjointed here today?
It felt good to be out there. I thought we started really well. I thought we were competitive. I thought we played with energy in the first 5 minutes. And then, when they kind of went on their first run, it kind of deflated us a little bit, which I'm not really sure why. But the offense, I think, for us, it starts on defense. And we, struggled, scouting report-wise. We struggled personnel. We struggled to do what the coaches asked of us. And then, overall, they just played with more energy and effort. And, those are the things that just can't happen. So, it's every single person on our team. And, nobody played well today. And, you should look yourself in the mirror and find ways where you can get better and, come back to practice tomorrow and then play again on Friday.
Caitlin, how do you feel from a conditioning standpoint? And then for Lexie, defensively, why do you think you all were so disjointed and maybe led to some of those, three-point shooting for them, really?
Yeah, it's going to take me a second to get my wind back. Like I said, there's not really anything that can replicate it than a true game. And, I felt pretty good. I was trying to play, shorter stints, but, sometimes it's almost harder to sit on the bench and then come back into the game. So I was just kind of finding a balance of that. But just trying to get my legs under me there in the fourth quarter and get my wind back a little bit, which will come over the next few games. But, yeah.
I would say defensively, Caitlin kind of mentioned it. Our coaches do a great job of giving us scout on every player, and I think collectively we didn't do a good job at taking away the stuff that their team likes to do and making them do things they don't want to do. We didn't do a good job of that. We also gave up some timely offensive rebounds that they do a great job of kicking it out, getting open looks, getting open threes late in the game. I think it really just comes down to effort and us not locking in mentally and following the scouting report.
Kind of off that note, Lexie, you guys had such a great week last week with, the big wins and then having some of these losses recently. Do you feel like that's just a matter of inconsistency when you kind of look at what you guys are capable of and kind of where you are at right now? And how do you guys, is it going back to that effort and that energy that you feel like is the biggest difference between where you guys are at your height and where you are right now?
For sure. I think, our team, we have a lot of inconsistency. We raise to the occasion when we're playing for 30,000, and then we need to bring that level of focus and that level of energy every single day. It's really hard to win in this league, and I think, we need to focus every game because all of these games matter when September, October comes. So it's really just going to come to us, and we really need to regroup, turn the page, learn from this, and come with a better mindset on Friday.
Yeah, Lexie, is there any mindset change for you coming off the bench versus starting, or how does that change things for you, if at all?
It doesn't. I think, just coming out and doing what I'm asked to the best of my ability. We play with a million rotations, so it doesn't really change much when we're out on the court, regardless of whether I'm starting or not. And I think just, coming out with as much effort as I can.
For either of you, I feel like we've, over the last several weeks, heard several times you got to know personnel, you didn't know the scouting report. How long do you feel like this has been a continued theme that you guys are trying to overcome?
Yeah, I think that just speaks to what Lexie just said, our inconsistency, and that's on us. We know that, and we know we have to be better in that. And, we're going to find a way to fix it, certainly, but we've showed glimpses of when we can do that and when we can beat the best teams in this league. And, I guess you can find that as a positive, but, you got to stop losing the ones that you're very capable of winning. And, Golden State's a really good team. They're well coached. They do things really well. They play everyone close. But I think we kind of shot ourselves in the foot. And even though we shot 30% and 22% from the field, yeah, that stinks. And we didn't make very many baskets across the board other than really KK was really the only one to really shoot well. We can still find a way to win. We got to get to the free throw line more. We got to do whatever it takes to find a way to win and not let that be deflating toward our defense.
Last one from me, Caitlin. What did you think of the way KK played and just the progress she's made throughout the season? In addition to the points and rebounds, she had 3 steals today as well.
Yeah, I think she's been tremendous. The athleticism that she has, she blocks shots, she gets her hands in passing lanes. And I think she's still navigating kind of how we're playing and figuring that out and getting minutes under her belt. But She's going to be a great asset for us as we go forward here, and I'm just really proud of her. She comes in every single day, works as hard as she can, is a great teammate, and when her number's been called, she's really produced. So it's really awesome to see the way she's playing, and I know she'll keep it up going forward.
Steph, they were coming in here talking about lack of focus, lack of knowing the game plan. How do you summarize kind of what you saw out there?
I was disappointed because I felt like there was a lack of competitive fire. With the exception of about 2 5-minute spurts, our attention to detail was poor. I'm not sure if it's not knowing the game plan as much as, because if it's not knowing the game plan, then that's a whole nother conversation, as much as not executing the game plan. Our attention to detail, undisciplined. I felt like our energy and our competitive fire was not there, and that's disappointing.
I guess, why do you think you had some of these inconsistencies when it comes to focus and engagement, things like that?
I'd say discipline more so than focus. I think this is a group that focuses, but you can focus, and then you have to be able to go out and be disciplined enough to execute it, right? I'm not sure. We're, as coaches, that's our job to figure it out. Why it is. You've seen it in spurts. You've seen it in moments. You've seen it with certain lineups. So finding those lineups that we've seen it with consistently, and maybe keeping those together. There's always going to be adjustments when you're working people back into the lineup. There's no question about that. But the competitiveness and the attention to detail, and willingness to play with multiple levels of effort. Prime examples when we get defensive stops, but then they get multiple offensive rebounds. That's 1-2. That's competitive fire. And that's unacceptable.
Yeah, you had that lineup change, kind of putting Caitlin in for Lexie instead of Ari. Just what did you like about Caitlin and Ari starting a game together and Lexie coming off the bench?
Yeah, I like the ability to have 2 primary ball handlers on the floor, particularly with a team that comes aggressively, in the 2-man game. Being able to play off of one another, being able to give the opponent some different looks, and quite frankly, for C specifically, not having to have her play under duress 94 feet the entire time she's on the floor. So there were some things that we liked about it. There were some things that we don't. So we'll continue to work with that.
Just in general, with Caitlin returning to the floor today, a little short of 25 minutes, how did you think she looked out there? And she said it might take a little bit of time for her to get her win back, but nothing, just kind of the normal thing you'd expect out of that point.
Yeah, I thought there were periods of time where she really looked good. I was really pleased, especially the first play of the game with, I think she had 2 or 3 deflections on that first possession defensively. I don't know, maybe I'm naive, but I don't worry about Caitlin getting back into the flow offensively. I worry about, I wouldn't say worry, but I think my biggest concern is when we reintegrate her, how do we continue to keep our ball movement and getting the ball going, not just side to side, but baseline to baseline. But I was a little bit concerned, defensively, just lots of movement, lots of lateral movement. I thought she looked good at times, and I think that's just building consistency and building her endurance and all of that. So I was pleased.
As a mini part of the performance, Timpson had a wonderful game all around. What kind of growth have you seen from her, steadily like that, or just waiting for that kind of moment?
Yeah, it's been steady growth. She's been earning more minutes. For every young player, coming into the league, particularly post position, it's learning the feel and her ability to continue to grow, continue to get her work in outside of practice time with Keith, our player development coach, and being ready when her number's called. You can see she's got really good instincts on the defensive end of the floor. She's continuing to find her way on the offensive end of the floor. She's bouncy, so she gives us a different type of look, on the interior. And there's no substitute for experience. So in some areas where opponents might take advantage, it's just experience. And I think she's come so far in these last 4 or 5 games, and anticipate her continued growth.
I know you mentioned a little bit about like Caitlin and integrating herself back in the offense, but in general with shooting 31%, some of the turnovers, what did you
Yep.
think was the biggest issue on that end of the floor?
Yeah, I think our decision making was not very good. At times I felt like we passed up open shots early, sometimes in shot clock, and then over penetrated, and we weren't getting better shots. A team like Golden State, who's really solid defensively, who try to force you into tough twos. When we drew them into the paint, we tried to shoot over 4 or 5 people instead of our seeing our easy passes out. Sometimes we've seen, with our group that physicality lends us to getting tunnel vision. So we got to continue to work that. And I think sometimes some of the turnovers in transition just maybe a little too overzealous, a little too anxious. Those moments where we're making a run, we cut it to 5, and then you give up an offensive rebound that starts a 9-1 run. I mean, those are pivotal moments. I think we gave up 10 offensive rebounds in the second half while we're playing from behind. You can't do that. So really our discipline to the details and not skipping steps to look to the next thing. We have to take care of the thing that's right in front of us. That might be an on-ball screen coverage. That might be a first screen or first action in offense. But we have to put first things first in everything that we do.